Hello, my name is Juliana Fessenden, and I'm here interviewing Jean Dewart today. She's one of my favorite Los Alamos Mountaineers, and so she's going to tell us a little bit about her story and what inspired her to be a mountaineer. So, Jean, I've got a series of questions, and we'll go through them today, and then at the end we'll share a little bit more about the Mountaineers.
Okay? Great.
All right. So, Jean, what inspired you to join the Los Alamos Mountaineers, and how did you find out about the club?
So it turns out I was invited by one of my dearest friends, Billy Nichols, to join in a Mountaineers trip. It had to be in the early 90s, I'm guessing. Eiichi Fukushima, who's a very famous mountaineer, and used to work at the laboratory before he retired, organized a snowshoe trip up to the Ice Lake Basin in the San Juan Mountains near Silverton, Colorado. And Billy invited me to join in. And it was my very first trip. Eiichi is just a fabulously cool guy, very welcoming. And there were about 6 people on the trip. And we drove up one day and spent the night in a motel in Silverton, and the next day we snowshoed into the Ice Lakes Basin, and we had the whole place to ourselves. The weather was fabulous. It was a February trip, so it was kind of cold, but we spent a couple of days snowshoeing around the mountains, and 2 of the guys dug an igloo, and it was just a very fun time, very welcoming time. So that was my first introduction, and I joined afterwards.
That's great. And from that trip, did that inspire you to lead more in the snow? Because I know that's one of your expertise.
So it was quite a while before I led a trip, but I'm a big fan of cross-country, backcountry skiing. I've done it since I was in college, and I love the snow in the mountains. I love the environment, and I love to cross-country ski. So that's been one area that I've really enjoyed doing. And we have a couple of places locally, the Valles Caldera when we have snow, and then up at Cumbres Pass and up near the Brazos Overlook are just wonderful places to kick and glide and to have kind of low angle telemark, not so much in the avalanche terrain. And it's a delight to me to be in those environments. So it's really fun to invite people to join in.
That's great. And what's inspiring when I see your trips is that they're open to experts and beginners. Mm-hmm. And that you are a leader of beginning trips. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you bring out the beginners into the environment.
So it turns out I can say that I've been on some form of skis for most of my life. And I've taken lessons of one form or another most of my life. Downhill skiing, telemark skiing, kicking and gliding, even some ski racing, cross-country ski racing, which I'm not very good at. But it's so fun to learn something new. And the coaches that I've had, the instructors that I've had, just every lesson I've taken, I've learned something new. And a lot of times I observe that downhill skiing, there's kind of a well-established sort of ski school at downhill ski areas. And so it's fairly easy to plug in and take lessons and learn the skills, which makes it so much more enjoyable. But in cross-country skiing, there aren't as many learning opportunities available. Our local Southwest Nordic Club does clinics every year, but they're really kind of oriented towards skiing on groom slopes. And I'm really interested in skiing in the backcountry because you can always find perfect powder somewhere in the backcountry. It's out there waiting for us. And so the last couple of years, I've done these little clinics just getting together with a couple of people at a time, really up at Pajarito Mountain Ski Area. There's a road beneath the lifts. That's where we typically start out hiking or skiing to Cañada Bonito, that stays in the shade and is groomed by the Southwest Nordic Group. And so it's a perfect place to practice techniques. And a lot of people have ended up buying cross-country gear without ever taking a lesson. So it turns out with a few tips, people can really progress. And then you're ready to go in the backcountry and have a good time.
That's great.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You know, when the light turns on for somebody going, oh, wow, this is how it works. It's so fun. It's so fun.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself. What are your hobbies, and what do you do for a living?
So it turns out I'm wonderfully retired now from the laboratory. I worked as a meteorologist at Los Alamos, and just thinking back, I just had so many wonderful opportunities. I'm very grateful for all the fun work I got to participate in and all the wonderful people that I got to work with over 36 years. It was a great blessing, and I'm very grateful for that. So now my hobbies are really outdoor stuff. I've never been an arts or crafts or musician kind of person. So I like to ski, I like to kayak, and I like to hike and backpack. Those are really my hobbies. And I'm lining up 2022 to balance all those things.
So how often do you lead a trip for the Mountaineers?
So the pandemic has sort of messed up things, kind of course. But I try to lead a trip once a quarter. There's so many wonderful local things to do in northern New Mexico, southern Colorado. Backpacking, cross-country skiing, day hikes. We now even have a group of retired people that hike on Wednesdays. And we skied once in the Vice Caldera when there was more snow, and snowshoed once as well. Kayaking hasn't been so much with the Mountaineers. We don't have quite the cadre of people that are whitewater boaters. So that's more kind of private trips. Yeah.
I could see that growing, especially knowing your expertise, because that's where Jean and I met, as on the kayaking. And that was amazing. You taught me so much just in our little, 3 hours together. And just how to negotiate the rocks and follow the bubbles. And, the fast course, slow courses. And so I could see people really benefiting from your knowledge in the whitewater too.
I've been really lucky in the age that I am. I grew up with clubs. When I was young, the clubs were the ones who owned the equipment and who offered the instruction. And so that was a way to get started. And the Mountaineers still has that going for it.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, what is the most interesting mountaineering trip you have experienced?
So I had to think long and hard, and so of course I'm going to pick two, not just one. And I think we're talking about outdoor trips, not strictly related to mountaineering.
I think so.
Okay.
Sure, let's go that way.
I'm going to go with that way.
Okay.
I had the chance. It's been 16 years now, but I had the opportunity to paddle my kayak on the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. I got to go on 2 trips that were privately organized, and at the time, the way the rules were, if you got a permit for March 20th, it was considered a winter trip, and so the trip was 20 days long. So we had 20 days to paddle 236 miles. In both trips, we had 3 or 4 rafts, and then 3 or 4 kayakers. It makes a nice balance. The rafts guys carry all your gear for you, and the kayakers are safety boaters. In the big rapids, a raft can flip or a rafter can be knocked out, and so we serve the purpose of going to help get them to shore. So it makes a nice group there, and it was such a fabulous experience. In both cases, our river leader was a fellow from Albuquerque who boated the Grand Canyon on about 50 different trips. And so he was really very familiar with all of the rapids at different water levels. For me, we did some practice on some other rivers, getting prepared for that kind of water of 13 and 15,000 CFS, where, normally today I'm boating on 800 CFS. So quite a difference in skill sets, and then to be in that place for 3 weeks, to be in the canyon, away from anybody else. It was just a magnificent experience. We tried to do every hike that was available. One of my favorites that I hope when people go they really try to do was a place called Nautiloid Canyon, and it's a limestone canyon bottom, and in the limestone there are nautiloid fossils that are this big. Think of a squid, this big. In the ground you're walking on. I mean, it was just stunning, just stunning. I'll remember that my whole life. It was a great experience. And then my other trip that I just still hold very dear was I had the chance to go on a trek in Nepal, and to walk amongst the tallest mountains on the planet. The countryside is so steep that everyone walks everywhere, and all the supplies are carried either on the backs of people or the backs of yaks and zos. Again, it was a 3-week trip with flying to and from Nepal on the ends, and to be in that environment for that long, and to meet the people who lived there, it was a stunning opportunity, really fabulous.
That's great. And were you able to share these experiences with the Mountaineers? Because every third Tuesday we have a special meeting with the Mountaineers where people can highlight their adventures. And so were you able to do that?
I did one on the Nepal trip, on the Potpourri one year. And I'd not done the Grand Canyon trip. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there is a, I don't think, because you've done that in the past, I think you can still share it.
Okay. There's not a statute of limitations?
No,
okay.
Exactly. That's
okay.
what I was thinking of. And so I think your adventures would be lovely to share if you have the opportunity. And again, it's every third Tuesday. We would love to hear some of your great adventures. Yeah. What is the most favorite mountaineering type of adventure for you?
So again, I have to vote for 2. I love to backcountry ski and I love to kayak. And both have some similar aspects to them. Beautiful environments. I went skiing up on the cross-country trails at Pajarito yesterday, and just to be in that snowy environment, it's so beautiful, and it just so speaks to me. And being on a river as well has those beautiful canyons, and even though the water in the Southwest has all this silt in it, so it's not the pristine water that you find in the northwest part of the United States. Still, it has a beauty to it, the water just all by itself, the motion. The two things I really like about both activities, both involve motion and balance. And sometimes I joke and say I have complete unity with the universe. Both activities, because they involve motion, your focus has to be right there. You're not worried about work. You're not worried about getting the washing machine repaired, or whatever. All of the day-to-day parts of our lives that can crowd in. Out in those activities, you have to be completely there, completely present. And so I find it very relaxing in that way. Not that it isn't very vigorous, but it's mentally relaxing because you have to be right there. And I love the motion and the balance in that beautiful environment. I love both of those. Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to probe you a little bit
Okay.
about the rivers available to folks here in the Southwest. And if you're a beginner, do you have courses you recommend versus expert? And what they are, where to go?
Right now, the prime source of instruction is the Adobe Whitewater Club of New Mexico. And every year there's a spring clinic on the Rio Grande. Beginners often go on what they call the state park run. Okay, it's kind of misleading because it hasn't been a state park in years. It got transferred over to the BLM to operate. But it's on the Rio Grande section above Pilar. So as if you were driving towards Taos through the canyon, you turn, the highway and the river part ways at Pilar. So you turn left at Pilar and drive up about 5 miles. And there's the Taos Junction Bridge. And that's normally where the clinic starts. And it's a Class 1 section with one Class 2 rapid on it. Class 1 being moving water, and then Class 2 is where you have waves from rocks. But if you line up at the start of the rapid, there's no maneuvering required. You can just run it straight. So, and then on the what's called the race course section, which is below Pilar, between Pilar and the county line, there's a BLM takeout there, and it's right on the Taos-Rio Arriba county line. That's a Class 3 section. If it's really big water runoff, it can be Class 4, but the intermediate clinic is held on there. And those are the two places. You can also hire some instruction from some of the outfitters that have permits on the Rio Grande and the Rio Chama. There's, Santa Fe rafting, Cocopelli rafting, Far Flung Adventures. There's a New Mexico Rafting Adventures company. Most of those you can find on the web, and they often offer kayaking instruction as well. Yeah.
And then to probe the cross-country skiing, do you have favorite places to go in around the county or in New Mexico, Colorado, where beginners could go, advanced skiers could go?
So locally, up at Pajarito Mountain, the Southwest Nordic Club grooms the tracks that go out from the ski area to the north towards Cañada Bonito, and they're in really good shape right now. The recent snowfalls, and it stayed moderately cold, so the slopes on the southern exposure haven't melted too much yet. So that's a great place to go. When we have snow, the Valles Caldera is fabulous. It turns out lately, because I didn't want to drive so far, we just drive up to the Coyote Call trailhead, and there's a break in the fence on the Valle Grande side. And so you can just go through the gate there. You don't have to drive all the way to the visitor center. It's lazy, I know. That's a great place to ski. You can ski from there to the Valles de los Pozos there, and it's a beginner level terrain. Not too steep. It's uphill on the way back to the car. And then from the visitor center, there are trails that go out towards South Mountain. Actually, that's from the History Grove area. You can park there and you can ski to the south, actually, there, southwest. That stays in the shadow of Redondo Peak, so it stays colder there and the snow quality holds well there. So those places locally are quite good. Then my favorite place is to go to Cumbres Pass, north of Chama, right on the Colorado border. There are several parking lots. Snowmobiles do use the area. I have found it fairly easy to avoid them. Skiing in the Dixie Creek drainage, to ski to the Spruce Hole area, and to Grouse Creek. Those trails don't seem to draw as much of the snowmobile crowd. And those are beginner and intermediate skill levels. There can be some avalanche danger in Cumbres Pass, but you can, because it's in Colorado, you can check the Colorado Avalanche Information Center for the current level of avalanche danger there. And it's pretty easy to avoid slopes above 25 degrees. So in general, that's the kind of skiing I like to do. So there's some other nice trails off of Highway 64 between Tierra Maria and Tres Piedras. Up on top, there's some, the Continental Divide Trail goes through there near Hopewell Lake. And the highway department does plow the highway. You know, right after a big storm, you might have to wait a couple of days before the highways open. But the Continental Divide Trail around Jawbone Mountain is a really nice place to ski. And many people like to ski to the Brazos Overlook, a fabulous place.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. What is the scariest thing that has happened to you on a mountaineering trip?
So I have a kind of a funny answer and a more serious answer. The closest I've ever come to death, where I was really scared. My friend Jerry Starr and I went kayaking one summer day during monsoon season, and there was enough water in the Chama, I'd guess 4,000 or 5,000 CFS. This is dating back to around 1998, so I'm a little fuzzy on the exact details. But you can run the wilderness run of the Chama in a day with that water level, and that's from Elvado Dam up west of Tierra Maria, all the way down to the Christ in the Desert Monastery. That's off of Forest Road 151. About 20 years ago, the Forest Service upgraded the road and really regraded it, put in drainage. And so this is no longer the case. But before that, when it rained, the road would turn, that clay, it would turn to grease. So we went in the morning early. We dropped a car at a place called Chavez Canyon, and then we drove the second car up to Elvado and put in. And we had a great day paddling. You know, it was 5 or 6 hours, something like that. But as used to happen all the time in July and August, we got a summer thunder shower. And so we had to drive out the 8 miles to, it's about 13 miles to get all the way back to the highway, but the first 8 are the problematic one where the road's only 1 lane wide, and at times the road is 50 to 100 feet above the river. And when we drove down, it was Jerry's car we left there. And so I'm in the passenger side and I'm next to the river. And after a few minutes, there was no contact between the wheels of the car and the road. The car was just drowning in grease, that greasy mud. And so the driving was like this. And I'm going, oh, you're doing a good job, Jerry. Way to go. Good driving. But I was fairly convinced we were going to go off the road, tumble down in the river, and that was going to be it. The road's much better now, and but that's the most frightened I've been. That's kind of my funny story, and perhaps maybe we all know that driving is in general more hazardous than hiking or skiing. In a more recent adventure, you all remember the 2018-2019 winter? Here's the winter that just kept coming. You know, we had snow into May. It was great. That's the kind of year when you want to plan your spring river trips on these very tiny desert rivers that don't often have enough water to run them. And so a good friend organized a trip for us on the Escalante River around Memorial Day. And the Escalante River is a 90-mile run you put on Highway 12 just east of the town of Escalante. And we chose to run all the way to Lake Powell, and we hired a boat to pick us up there. And sometimes people stop at Coyote Gulch, which Bill Podorski mentioned in his recent talk. A lot of people backpack out there, but we wanted to go and do the whole thing. And then I'd actually never been out on Lake Powell on a boat before, and so that was a neat part of the experience. We put on, it turns out the put on for the river is actually right under the highway bridge that goes over the Escalante River. And that was good because it was snowing. You know, okay, you're going kayaking and you're putting on in the snow. So it was a cold trip. If it had warmed up early on, perhaps the water level would have been maybe 400 CFS. But because it was so cold, the snows in the mountains the first couple of days were not melting into the river. So we ran at about 200 CFS, which is, it's a very narrow little river, a very rocky little river. And there's one place where the boulders have fallen into the river, so you have to get out and portage your gear around it. Because the water was low, there were also places where we had to just get out. The river became braided, and the sandbars, you just had to get out of your boat and drag it because it wasn't deep enough for our boats. We were in pack rafts. The river, we saw one boat, a Tomcat is a make of inflatable kayak. That's about 8 feet long, but that was kind of long for this water level. So we were in pack rafts. There were 6 of us, and we're really single file because the river's not wide enough to boat side by side. And I was paddling sweep. Our trip leader, very experienced trip leader, was in the front, and then we were spread out in between. And we came around a corner. And there was a tree in the river. Our trip leaders saw a slot on the river right to get through, and she went ahead and went through. But the next 2 people were not successful. The second person got tangled up in the tree. And this is a very dangerous situation. It's called a strainer. And you could drown if you and your boat got caught in the tree and got pushed under. She had the presence of mind, very skilled boater. She jumped out onto the tree. She, as her boat was getting stuck, she jumped out on top of the tree. And that gave the person behind her a little cushion, and she was able to jump out to the shore. The last two of us didn't see any of this happen because it was around a bend and we were appropriately spread out. When we came around the bend, we could see what was happening, and we got out on the shore. So it was a dangerous situation. But by the time the last two of us got there, the two people whose boats had gotten stuck were safe. So it wasn't scary like that, and then your river training kicks in. Our trip leader hiked back up to the top because she had made it through, and the two people whose boats got stuck, the one who was on the tree was able to make it to shore. And then we got up and up above the tree, and we set up a Z-drag. It's a way to use mechanical advantage with a tree to pull the boats off of. And I actually got to be the one who went into the river to hook the boats one at a time onto a carabiner onto this Z-drag setup. We got them pulled out. We got the boats came off without any harm. We had no patching to be done. Really tough. The materials they use in pack rafts are similar to Kevlar. They're super tough. So really, we didn't have any issue with the equipment. And we did a lessons learned afterwards that, okay, in these situations, it would be better if everyone got out before the obstacle, and then we worked out a plan together. So, but that's probably as dangerous a situation that I've been involved in.
From what I've learned is that if you do get stuck in one of these trees and you are in your boat, to hold the tree and try to climb out onto the tree. So if you're actually underwater, you have to have the peace of mind to grab the tree and climb. And that's a way to save yourself. Very scary. If you could give new mountaineers some advice, what would it be?
Join in on the trips. I'm hopeful that our number of trips are gonna increase as we reach our new normal with the pandemic. Join in. There's so many fun places to go. There's so many new places that people in the mountaineering group know about to take you, and the people are so nice. Join in. And then I'm supposed to plug and join the club too.
Definitely.
It's $15. Join into the activities. It's really great. And then I might broaden the advice to new and longer-term members. We should always remember that our club is a group of volunteers. So your part as a trip participant really goes a long way to making the trip nice and fun for everyone. It's really helpful when people are on time. That's really nice. If your trip requires equipment, it's really great to check out your equipment before the trip. If you have a broken snowshoe binding, you can probably find the right things to get it fixed at Metzger's. But if we're all the way at Cumbres Pass, it might make it hard to participate. And so then a lot of juggling has to happen. And then if you have questions about the trip, ask the trip leader about, is your gear suitable? Is the, okay, the trip leader can't always tell that it's going to be 5 hours and 45 minutes and we're going to be back at 5:45 at the parking lot. That's kind of a little tough to say very exactly. So if you have some constraints, talk to the trip leader and say, can we guarantee that we'll be back at 6 o'clock? Well, probably most of the time the trip leader is going to say, I can't guarantee it. So, work those things out ahead of time. It's probably going to be a really fun trip. So, give the whole day to it. And then, as you get some experience, if you have benefited from a Mountaineers trip, think about leading one yourself. I think the numbers in the club right now are around 160, 170 members, something like that. And I bet 100 of those people are doing something active 3 and 4 times a month out in the outdoors. And many people share their private trips now at the club meetings. So I urge everyone to think about offering a club trip. Just think, if 100 people offered a club trip, shoot, we'd have 2 trips going out every week. And if everybody did it just once. So remember, if you had a good time, think about giving back, because we're an all-volunteer army.
Absolutely. So what is the most important thing you do when you are preparing for a trip?
So there's probably a handful of things. The first thing is always to go through my gear. I would never want to be on a trip without a first aid kit. It would just make me crazy to be in a situation. I mean, even if it was moleskin for somebody's blisters, if we didn't have that with us. I actually now keep a first aid kit in every pack that I own, so I don't have to worry about having one. I'm also a fan. We have great GPS tools in our phones these days that have all the topo maps and all the trails, but I still carry a paper map. Then I don't have to worry about it. I keep lists on my phone about what I bring for cross-country skiing, for what I bring kayaking, for what I bring backpacking. Now I just have to make sure I look at it, okay, before leaving. But I always want to make sure that I have all my gear. I try, if I can avoid packing the morning of the trip, I try to avoid that. That for me, I'll forget something, just as a rule. And then the other thing is that I just try to check in, if I'm the trip leader, with the people to make sure that they have the right equipment and if they have the skill level to do the trip. And of all the trips that I've led, I've only had a little bit of an argument once where I suggested someone not go because they didn't have the right gear and the right experience. This was a 17-mile, one-day ski tour, and so we really had to move efficiently, but we said, hey, let's do another trip that's not so strenuous and requires everybody to be really on. So we worked out another trip, and it worked out fine. Most of the time when I ask people about their skills and their equipment, they usually have better skills and absolutely as good as equipment as I have. So it's 99%, it's never a problem asking people if they're ready for that particular trip. People are real good about it. Yeah.
Do you ever have like pre-trip briefings, like the morning of? I credit some mentoring from Michael Altair with this. He's really good and and it's encouraged me to really talk about everyone's first aid skills before we head out, especially in the winter. It's more of a challenge, if somebody fell and broke their ankle, that's much more of a challenge to get them out. And so to talk to the group about what our skills are, what our equipment are, and then where we expect
there might be some hazards. In kayaking especially, okay, thinking negatively, it only takes 5 minutes to drown, that's it. Okay, so working together as a team, that to always have kind of a safety briefing before we get on the river, that we're going to stay together as a group, that we all know the river signals just to refresh ourselves about how to avoid obstacles. That everybody has their life jacket correctly put on, anybody can forget a buckle, okay? Just, you get in a hurry and you get distracted. So we check each other, just, is your helmet strapped? We want to work together on boating to have a safe and fun trip. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that extremely valuable being a newbie. Then I feel much more secure with the group and the expectations. That's really good. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Let's see. One thing. Let's see. Did it pass through my mind and did it stay? I've done a couple of weekend and 4 and 5 day backpack trips, and we actually got together as a group before we went to go over the route and to go over all our equipment, and that was helpful to have everybody's expectations, and then they could set up their own GPS, for where the trail is, and that was helpful too.
Yeah, absolutely. I do that too with my groups.
Okay.
And having that peace of mind to know that all of my equipment is functioning and I've got the right things. That's really important. Well, thank you, Jean.
One more thing. I've gotten to go to on so many trips. You asked me for the top trips. There have been so many wonderful trips because of either Mountaineers trips or people I've met through the Mountaineers. I was able to join Norbert Enslin on a cross-country ski trip across Yosemite. That was a real highlight. I got to go on a trek in Peru with Mario Scalacci and a group. We did, it turns out there was a big release from El Vado Dam the 1st of December. This last year, they're lowering the lake level to repair the dam. And it was enough water for us to do a 1-day trip. And that was just a hoot. It was cold, but the weather was good. So that was really nice. There have been so many, and because of the experience that I've got from doing these things, I was able to hike the Oregon section of the Pacific Crest Trail a couple of years ago. Just so many opportunities have happened because of the Mountaineers and the wonderful people that I've met. And so it's a joy. It's a joy. And I appreciate all the people who serve as officers. I know you put in a fair amount of work to keep things going, and I appreciate each one of you that does that.
Well, you were also an officer.
So I know
so you
that
know.
You're working. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing today all your adventures and your enthusiasm for the Mountaineers Club. And it is a wonderful club. We do hiking, kayaking, cross-country skiing, climbing, canyoneering, very long llama trips out in the canyons. We do so much with such experienced people who are so motivated, and they can teach you so much about the safety and enjoy the environment. And so if you would like to get more involved or learn more and be part of our adventures, please join us. You can find out more at losalamosmountaineers.org. Thank you.